Why did I just spend my morning arguing on Twitter about eggs? Why? I have a lot of complaints about social media, and I understand that I am part of the problem. And I am standing up and admitting this now. There is just something irresistible about jumping into the inanity. Today's inanity was over milk, and it was over a story that was written. I don't even remember where it was written now, but it was about a family who was complaining about inflation. They buy 12 gallons of milk a week, and their budget has increased a lot, and it's starting to hit them. And instead of the story being about inflation, Twitter took it, and Twitter, which is great at smashing nuances to bits and pieces, and then putting them in a blender and blending them up into a smoothie, and then pouring them out all over the ground. Twitter, which is really great at eliminating nuance, turned it into a battle of milk and the cost of milk. And is this family representative of the average American family? And I got into that fray too, by the way, because I feel like there's all kinds of like, why would you question how much milk a family drinks? There are all kinds of reasons why a family would buy 12 gallons of milk a week. I had a roommate in college whose brother drank a gallon of milk at least a day. I saw it with my own eyes. It was the craziest thing I've seen. One of the craziest things in my life. Side note, he did go on to get drafted into the NFL. So, but I guess my first assumption wasn't that this family was lying or that they were abusing milk. My assumption was that they were a big family and that they drank a lot of milk. And then I did make a comment about how the coastal elite set doesn't understand how other Americans live, which of course offended people who live on the coast. And I live on the coast, which I feel like that qualifies me to talk about the coastal elite bubble because it is real. We don't all live in it, but it's an attitude, not a location, folks. So everyone can calm down about that. But I think that there is a real divide between people who live on the coast or people who have well, we call them dinks, double income, no kids. I think there's a real divide between the average American family. And when I say average, I don't mean average like 2.5 kids. I mean average like regular American families who don't live in huge city centers, who don't live lives where Amazon comes at your beck and call, or where you don't live next door to your store. It's really, now that I'm in California, I understand how separated you can be from that life if when you live in this area, these kinds of city centers for a long time. You can really be completely ignorant of how people live. My family and I just took a trip to Colorado to Telluride, and we visited some friends there. And they moved there from California, and their lives are totally different than they were here in California. What they have to buy in a week for groceries is totally different than what they had to do here. Because here, their store is 2 minutes away. There, their store is an hour away. So I guess the point is not milk. Milk is not the point. Or how much milk people drink, or how much milk people should drink is not the point. We're distracting ourselves. Again, I realize I'm part of the problem, and I'm sorry for that. I chase squirrels just as much as the next person. But when I stop to think about it, milk is not the problem. Who drinks how much milk, where, and with whom is not the problem. The problem is that inflation is contributing to the struggle and suffering of regular American families across the nation, whether they live in cities, whether they live in middle America or on the West Coast or whatever. And I know that the milk conversation really was not about the milk, but about the accusation. The milk conversation was really a surrogate conversation for who's responsible for inflation. And if you admit that inflation is a problem, then you have to admit that the current administration is a problem. Because, of course, the buck stops at the top. We hear that every election cycle. And so if there are certain people who are investing in the idea that inflation isn't a problem and most people aren't experiencing hardships because of it, So that manifests itself as a family who drinks 12 gallons of milk each week is drinking too much milk. And they're obviously not the average regular American family. It's not about the milk, people. Whether you buy a gallon of milk in a week or 12 gallons of milk in a week, whether you buy a gallon of gas or 12 gallons of gas, whether you buy 4 pencils a week or 4,000 pencils a week, the point is the price of everything has gone up. And unless you are wealthy, that is oftentimes very difficult to come back from, and certainly very difficult to make up in today's climate. So the real conversation here is inflation. And the real conversation is, are you hearing the people who are saying that this is hurting them, who are saying that their lives are harder because of the policies coming out of Washington, D.C.? This week, we saw people react at the ballot box to not being heard, to feeling like they weren't heard. And frankly, to employ a cliche, that's how we got Trump. A bunch of people who felt that they hadn't been heard, who felt they were dismissed for telling the truth about their own lives. These people told the truth about their own lives. There are a lot of Americans out there who are telling the truth about their lives, and others are dismissing them as lies and liars because they don't line up with your worldview or don't line up with what you think should be happening. And that's the real problem here, and that's the real divide that we have. We don't seem to have the ability to peek into each other's lives anymore, or the desire to do so. And so we came to that milk story with a whole bunch of assumptions about how much milk should be consumed and what the average family looks like. And I guess my point is, every family is different, and every family has a different baseline for normal, and every family has different needs. And the point is not what those needs are. And the point is not to judge a family for how much liquid they consume in a week, right or wrong. The point is that the budget that they've set for themselves has begun to explode, and they don't know how to counteract it. And there's no help. And the people that are supposed to help them are telling them that they're liars for even suggesting that they're suffering under inflation. That's the point. It's not about the milk.